All right, guys, welcome back from your break. We are now closing off on our last session of the day. We've got Luke Stanton from Neighborly, who will be leading our panel, with Marco from Thumbtack, John Trout from HomeAdvisor, and Brandon Wallengren from 5-Star Franchising. Thank you guys for taking the time to join us. We'll be talking about how to work with marketplace partners. I'll just give you a quick reminder again. In the session at the very top right-hand side, you'll see there's a feed. That's a chat that we can all communicate with one another. Next to that is Q&A. Feel free to ask any questions you've got and load them in there. At the 30-minute mark, Luke will moderate those questions with our panelists. If you feel brave and you're willing to do so, hit the raised hands area. We can pull you on stage. You can turn on your video and ask a question live, and then we can answer those for you. And we'll end at the 45-minute mark with another networking session in the lounge or arena. Thank you, everyone, and looking forward to this panel. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, Scott. And we've got 30 minutes to dig into some really great conversation. We've got some great thought leaders on the call, so we're going to be quick about the introductions. But my name is Luke. I'm the president for ProTradeNet, which is kind of the supply chain division for Neighborly, all of their brands and their franchise owners. Marco?
Hey, everybody. Marco Zappacosta, co-founder and CEO of Thumbtack. Hopefully a partner you guys know well, and hopefully we'll know even better at the end of today.
John, how about you go next?
Hey guys, how's it going? My name is John Trout. I am with HomeAdvisor. I handle anything outside facing for the company. So I am the face for you guys to reach out to, work with our national sales team. Any questions you have, you can refer to me.
And Brandon.
Hey, Brandon Wallengren here. As Scott mentioned, from 5-Star Franchising and 5-Star Bass Solutions. Excited to be here, but obviously representing kind of the franchisor side of things in this conversation here in Northern Utah.
Awesome. We'll appreciate that. We're excited. The mix of supplier, marketplace partners, specifically on the lead gen side, and then the franchisor. So I'm really interested about this dialogue. So knowing that we have 30 minutes, let's dig into it. I've got a question for the group, and I think everyone's tired of talking about COVID. So it's not a platform necessarily to have to dig into all the minutia of COVID and what's happened there, but things have changed. And so to put a broad question out there, on the digital front, lead generation, consumer expectations, how have things dynamically changed beginning of last year versus where we are today?
I can start off. What I'll say, it's really accelerated the change that I think we've all seen coming. The sort of adoption of digital workflows, the sort of consumer orientation towards discovering, auditing, and then ultimately hiring pros online. I think that took a big step forward this year, just as people looked to do this in new ways, felt like they had to go to other sources. And that doesn't feel like it's going backwards. That's just going to bring the future that I think many of us have seen or are building towards. It's just making it happen much faster, which feels great for our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. John or Brandon, what about you guys?
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Marco said, we're seeing a huge influx of homeowner requests. And I think that is due to just people sitting at home and looking at all the projects in their house. I know me and Luke were joking last week about how many times I've went to Home Depot and bought so many different tools that I never would have bought because I'm staring at these projects in my home. So it's also a huge opportunity in this industry because there is a ton of homeowners that are at home staring at things that need to get fixed, and now is the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, agree. I think what was funny about that interaction, John, was that you and I both bought the same angle grinder. And I don't know if either one of us have any business having an angle grinder. I don't even know why I need it, but I got one.
Yep, 100%.
Brandon, what about the franchisor perspective? How have things changed for you guys coming off of 2020?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously a really different year, but for our business, we were really prepared and well positioned for what occurred in 2020. The marketplace partners, Thumbtack, HomeAdvisor, obviously really critical to that. But we were already a business that was really based on online marketing already. I think it was ProNexis that preceded this discussion. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join that discussion, but they're also a very important partner with us. So, I mean, I don't want to say that it was, completely seamless, but it was very, very close to completely seamless. Already having these partnerships in place, as home shows and other things like that, more traditional marketing, really slowed down or stopped completely. It was very important for us to already have those in place. And so it was just a matter of just kind of taking the budget that we had allocated maybe for events or things like that, and just pushing that budget into these existing relationships that were in place. And so, it allowed us to really grow our business, which we grew our business substantially in 2020. I mean, it was a record year for us on many different levels. Total sales, it was a record year. Average transaction was a record year. And so being flexible and making those adjustments, but already being prepared, thinking ahead, and knowing, well in advance that online marketing, with or without coronavirus was the future anyway. So it kind of propelled us ahead, a few years, but we were able to pivot really, really quickly in the springtime.
So I want to ask you a question about that. I think it's interesting because when this all started to unfold, I think there's this place where certainly no one knew it was going to happen, but we were thinking the worst, right, for just the impact to the economy, to businesses. And there are segments of the business that have certainly suffered more than others. Why do you think that you guys fared the way that you did in 2020?
So, I mean, there was a moment in time, right, mid-March until mid-April, I think the entire world, stood still for a bit, right? So we definitely felt the impact. It's not like we went all the way to zero, but there was an impact, right? And we could look back at the data now and see, hey, this occurred. But a few things really went into play. One is, and this is just speaking as a franchisor, we immediately got connected with franchisees. There were a lot of really nervous franchisees at that time. We didn't know what was occurring, what was going to happen specifically. And so we got on weekly phone calls, weekly conference calls with our franchise owners and started talking, hey, how does this affect your marketing plan? What should we do? How do we plan ahead? What is your relationship with, and I'm going to keep going back to these gentlemen here with HomeAdvisor and Thumbtack, right? But do you have those accounts set up? Or do you know how to manage those accounts? How can we step in as a franchisor and make sure that those accounts, on even the most basic levels are really set up properly? From, again, really basic things like zip codes and services, and making sure that all those things were really dialed in, so that when we came out of that, right, when things started to normalize a little bit, people started spending money a little bit, stimulus started to come through, we had already had that, that pipeline and those adjustments in place. So having the connection with our franchisees, and then making sure our franchisees also then had a connection with their reps, with these companies or any of the other companies, that they started working really closely with them. So when we came out of it fast, and we've just continued forward. And it's been kind of interesting to watch. We're very optimistic about, what 2021 is going to bring for us. I mean, my wife and I, we booked a flight for Europe. We're sending messages to the universe. We're ready to move on in a normal way. So we're doing our part to in the pandemic, but it's been exciting for us. I mean, as a company to see now, the enthusiasm behind these marketplace partners or these affiliates, to say, hey, we can get back to normal. We can run the home shows. We can do that if we need to. But now we've really built this other pipeline completely, and we understand how to work, with, in our case, ProNexis is a great partner along with, these other groups.
Right. Mark, I'm going to direct this question. Yeah, go ahead. Step in.
Yeah, I think the one thing we should highlight is that I don't think that's been true for all pros. And actually, I'll call out HomeAdvisor's numbers in part because they're public, and I can. They only grew their sort of monetized transactions in the single digits last year, post-COVID. So there was not this like huge demand bump across the board. I think what you've seen, and we've seen it, is a flight to quality. The pros who are most well set up on these platforms, who are doing the best jobs at communicating to customers, setting expectations around COVID precautions, et cetera, those are the ones who are winning. And so I think this industry shakeup is happening more by the flight to quality than it is by, like, you know, you look at a delivery as a category and their volumes are up 3, 4, 5x year over year. That's a true COVID spike. In our case, I think there's some of that here and there. But on average, what you're seeing more is the great pros or the stronger pros doing even better. And the ones that hadn't invested in these new channels and new ways of working are struggling.
Yeah. That's a good point. I appreciate you making that note. So statistics are a bit arbitrary sometimes. So I'll just warn you, this is a bit arbitrary. But I think I read that the experience that we just went through kind of accelerated adoption of technology by 10 years. And I don't know how accurate that is per se, but the only thing I know is that my grandmother is ordering groceries online, and that's actually a wild dynamic. So Marco, just kind of going back to that, we know, like, we're looking back, we're going, okay, we recognize things have happened. What do we do? What do we, like, your point on a flight to quality, what do we do with this acceleration of adoption?
Yeah, so, you know, our orientation is to invest in the customer experience of tomorrow. And I don't think this takes some amazing insight. You know, our view is that our category will end up like really all e-commerce categories, where consumers want to see a broad selection. They want to see it instantly. They want to see all the relevant details, including price and reviews and credentials. And then they want to be able to take action, not for any pro, but for specific pros that they want. And this is an experience that we've been building towards for 3 years. And we're seeing it pay enormous dividends these days, because it's really meeting a need of customers wanting to be able to get exactly who they want, when they want, for the price they want. And so the question is simply, how sort of change oriented is our industry going to be to meet that customer preference? And I think what you're seeing is the pros who are finding the most success are the ones who are leaning into that future. And I think the same is going to be true for platforms, right? We've taken this big effort over the last few years to move past for the request for quote platform that some of our partners have, and really be much more of a search-driven marketplace where customers can identify specifically the pros that they want and then book them directly. We think that makes for a much better customer experience, but also makes for a much better pro experience, because then we're delivering appointments and not just leads. So this is a moment of change. It's going to reward the people who are willing to change along with it.
John, I'm going to go to you on just to kind of expand on that. Can you speak to some of the perspective from HomeAdvisor?
Oh, I for 100% completely agree with Marco. And that's why we had these things in place, such as our instant booking, allowing the customer to go ahead and book an appointment directly with the contractor of their choice. Couple other features that we have as far as like consumer choice, where they're able to go in and pick the exact pro they want to work with. But we thought beyond that, and we do understand that people do have safety concerns. So we do incorporate a couple other things to just stay ahead of the game. So one of the things we did was incorporate an in-app video feature. So essentially you can get contactless estimates right through our app. And I know you're able to do that through, you know, an iPhone or a media like this, but the fact that it comes through the app only adds credibility to the contractor. So again, the contractors that are adopting this new in-app video feature, being willing to give contactless estimates, things of this nature are the ones that are really succeeding. Yeah.
Brandon, would love your thoughts on this. I'm just going to talk about maybe it's not so obvious, or it is obvious, but some potential tension around some of this. So you got the consumer experience, and Marco and John, speaking from your perspective, how you're capitalizing on what the consumer expects, and then you also have premium brands that just as equally want to be in control of that consumer experience. And so when it comes to that particular piece, as a premium brand, you might want to have more influence over price points and being in front of that customer. And I hope this makes sense, but how do you marry? Do you see any tension between what y'all are doing and what premium brands might also want to control in the marketplace? Is there any tension there? And how might we marry that together so we can just both work together better? Is that a clear question?
Yeah, I think so. You're kind of alluding to, you know, if pricing or other categories are determined by the marketplace partner versus by the franchise brand.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there is some tension there. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, as we say it, I mean, I feel like I understand why there would be tension there, but we haven't really felt it.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing, I don't get feedback from franchisees that say, hey, you know, the messaging that takes place from Thumbtack, you know, is a problem, or the messaging that takes place by HomeAdvisor is a problem. Like, quite honestly, we don't get that feedback. You know, where there can be tension, quite honestly, is that, and this just requires us as a franchisor to provide coaching to the franchisees, is that, you know, they're not going to close every, you know, Thumbtack lead. They're not going to close every HomeAdvisor lead. In fact, probably the majority they won't. And so, you know, I think what is important in this kind of relationship is to always remind the franchisee that it's, you know, it's a numbers game. That, you know, if you're not closing the vast majority, that doesn't mean you're not profitable in these relationships. You know, it may feel like it, but, you know, managing the numbers, I think, is a really, really important thing. So that's where there can be, but with some good coaching at the franchisor level, making sure we are on top of the numbers, making sure there's a good feedback loop, you know, with the affiliate, so that we can share information and say, hey, you know, out of our system, this is where we see the sales coming from. You know, are those in line with our marketing percentages? And is there anything that we can do to, you know, to make sure they're in line? Because, you know, we want sales, you know, the marketplace partner wants sales, you know, we're basically aligned there, but sometimes that tension comes out and we have to spend some time coaching and making sure that everyone, you know, because there's so much more power if the franchisee genuinely feels like they're making money every time they invest, you know. And as soon as that is lost, as soon as that feeling is lost, then it becomes an uphill battle. So, you know, we do our best to, you know, be real around the numbers. You know, we have to be really, you know, obviously our interest is the franchisees, our interest is not the marketplace partners, right? But real around the numbers, but then always maintain that feeling, because it's pretty remarkable when we get in and we crunch those numbers that, you know, we'll have a franchisee saying, hey, I'm not making money. We run the numbers and they absolutely are. And so we can kind of coach them away from, you know, maybe, you know, quite honestly, making a poor decision about, you know, limiting a budget, or, you know, maybe moving on to another partner. So those are the things that we spend a lot more time on than probably the other.
Brandon,
Sorry.
I just wanted to, Brandon, I think that's absolutely great. Everyone should be on top of their ROI, especially when it comes to marketing. Track everything. And the leads that we aren't closing, making sure we are still databasing that information, understanding that there is human behavior, and there is times that, you know, the homeowner could be busy. For example, I'm buying a house right now. My realtor just texted me. If she would have called me right now, I would say, hey, leave me alone. In reality, I still need to buy a house. So understanding that just there are human behavior, that it is smart to keep following up on a lead until the homeowner says, hey, I got my project completed, and running your ROI, making sure that, you know, if I took in 10 leads and I'm closing 3, am I profiting? If I am, let's keep going. If I'm not, let's circle back and look at our process. But I thought you hit that right.
Marco, I've got a question for you, but you kind of look like you need to say something. Do you have a response to any of that?
What I want to highlight, so I really believe that our interests are completely in line with our pros' interests. So like at our core, we serve a collective customer, and through that are on the same team. Where we see this tension arise is when it comes to disrupting workflows, and pros being very hesitant, understandably, because they've invested in that workflow, they have operationalized it, they know how to measure it. And this is the more of the quote unquote tension that we see. And I'll give you a great example. We've now launched Instant Book, and the conversion rates are dramatically better. You know, we have done this sort of within the same product experience. Something you'll see us do is really build one cohesive whole and not sort of disjointed sort of buying experience with which I think you often see elsewhere. And the conversion rate is dramatically higher. And even more, we've kind of eliminated the concept of speed to lead, because what we're delivering is a booked appointment or booked consultation. And that is undoubtedly working, but there's no, but it's also true that for pros, that's a real change, a real operational sort of evolution to be able to take advantage of that and work in that context. And so that's the tension that I see. And what we got to work hard on is to ensure that pros understand why we're doing that and the return they're going to get from that. And obviously making our tooling great. You're going to see a lot of improvements on that front over the first half of this year. But I'm thankful to be in a business, unlike, I see peers that are in ride sharing or delivery where the platforms truly are in tension with their sort of workforces. And we don't have that because, we're not in the business of being service professionals ourselves. We're in the business of empowering these entrepreneurs to meet more customers and grow their businesses.
Right. We have so much to unpack. As we're talking about this, just more questions are coming to mind, but I want to ask you one more question on this particular space, because you mentioned it actually when I first met you, and I always appreciated this about your approach. And you referred to the frenemy concept, and I think some of that may stem from an abundance versus scarcity mindset. And when you look back in 2020, it's like there was a point where people just needed leads. Like we needed business, right? And it was about leveraging all the available tools in front of you. What do you think about that concept, and how do we as franchisors need to be thinking about that?
Yeah, I think you're right that there's more true tension between platform and franchisor than there is between platform and sort of service professional. Sure. or
That's a good distinction. Yeah.
And I think there it's just like, what is your core expertise? What do you feel like as an enabler of these entrepreneurs you're able to do sort of specifically? And I think there's a ton that you guys do from a sort of branding, training, just generally business coaching. And then there's a slice of things, online marketing, where I would argue, that we're much more best of breed, and there's other platforms. So I think it's just being about humble and honest for both of us, likely to sort of say, this is the part we do really well: demand generation, customer conversion, generally sort of online presence. But there's this entire world of stuff that we don't touch at all. And it's vital to work with partners who enable pros to grow in those respects too.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so just kind of shifting gears here, I want to ask just a totally separate question from where we've been tracking so far, but going back to, well, maybe it is associated, going back to adoption and looking at 2021, where we go next, are there specific trends? Are there things that we need to be paying attention to on behalf of our contractors or franchisees, on behalf or from a franchisor perspective? Are there things that you're seeing that we really need to be thinking about if we're going to continue to capitalize on some of the changes that have happened in the market?
Yeah, so my advice, one of our biggest challenges in moving forward the sort of the buy-side experience is the incredible fragmentation we see among professionals in the sort of digital back office tools that they use. I think franchisors have this unique opportunity to help standardize that back office, and through that provide very simple integration with platforms like us. What's coming, the next wave of evolution is moving the experience from a contact to a booking. That is where customers want to go. That's where pros want to go. And this is not about the on-demand stuff that others are talking about, where you're not picking your pro. That'll be part of the future, but the biggest part is still going to be shopping, just like every other category, where you specifically choose the person you want to work with. But you don't want to have to call and say, hey, are you free? Do you do this job? Do you travel to my zip code? How much do you charge? So all of that stuff needs to be answered up front, such that what we can deliver to a pro is a booked appointment, whether that's for an on-site consult, a video consult, or for the job themselves. But to make that magic happen, we got to integrate with your calendars. We have to have a CRM that we can talk to. And I think franchisors have a real opportunity to sort of like speed that up and to create a lot of value potentially for their franchisees.
Going over to you, Brandon, here really quickly, from the franchisor perspective, what would you tell our marketplace partners in this, Thumbtack and HomeAdvisor in this context? What would you tell them that they need to be paying attention to as well? So, are the things that are important to you as a franchisor that you need partners like this to be acutely aware of?
Yeah, I mean, one that I would kind of echo that we talked about before, which I think most marketplace partners are really good at, is just maintaining that feedback loop, right? Meaning, the lead is provided or the booking is provided, and we then, the ball's in our court, as the franchisor, as the franchisees, to then take that, that individual all the way through, that process to, to a sale, hopefully. And so maintaining that feedback loop, where we can share information, I think we can learn a lot from each other. And we've always appreciated, learning, best practices. Sometimes it's really great to hear from, HomeAdvisor or Thumbtack, what is making other people successful with their customers. But that, that constant communication, helps a lot, because I agree. I think it was Marco kind of mentioned, aligning interests. I mean, everyone's pulling kind of in the same direction. We want to continue to pull in the same direction, but, them knowing what's actually happening at the end of this, very end of this process, I think is really important.
Yeah. And I have always found, like Marco and John, what you guys are saying is you're looking for, you're wanting to have an honest conversation and saying, look, we'll do whatever it takes. We're mutually aligned, but let's talk. Let's have a conversation and figure out other things that we should be doing. Going over to you, John, I've always found that you guys are really easy to work with and to have those kinds of conversations. On the HomeAdvisor front, what makes life easier in terms of working with you guys specifically? What are the things that we all need to be watching out for too?
Yeah, so there's a ton of different options we offer as far as our lead types. That each of them work out for different pros. Like, for example, Marco mentioned their instant booking. We did have that for some time. We do have a market match where you're matched up to a few pros. We have an exact match where you're matched with more of a one-to-one connection. And also we have our profile where you can leave reviews, ratings, comments. So the way to be most successful is trying out each of our different lead types. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And I think that's with pros in each industry and each market. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So then I see that with our platform it's completely interchangeable. You can spend your money in each of the different buckets, turn it on, off like a faucet. So the nice thing about it is the ability to test out what works for you. What I think works for everyone, and what I think it is adamant in 2021, is ratings and reviews and reputation. And that goes across the board. We are, whether you partner with us, with Thumbtack, Google, and beyond, the more reviews, the better. The higher the ratings, the better. We were just reading a Trustpilot study in 2020. They had 9 out of 10 consumers are going to read reviews before they make a purchase decision when it comes to services. So building that reputation and having the ability to do that on our profile as well, I think is one of the big things that makes us such a good partner to.
Well, it certainly creates more trust, right? And the consumer in a lot of ways is wanting to validate that, right? And reviews are certainly an easy way to do that. So we just have roughly a minute before we get into some of the Q&A. And so I'm going to ask you, I always hate when people ask me this question. I'm sorry that I'm going to do it to you guys, but is there one thing, and there's no silver bullets, but is there one thing that has taken place in the market that you think is going to be very influential on future expectations? Does that question make sense? So, we've got a high adoption of technology by a greater percentage of the population. So is there one thing that you might sum up and say, hey, look, you need to be watching out for this?
Yeah. Do you mind if I start off?
Go for it.
Yeah, I think just looking at the 2021 consumer behavior across the board in every market, we want things instant. We hit a Uber we expect it to be in front of our house. We order something on Amazon, we expect it to be on our door the next day. It's just kind of how consumer buying behaviors have changed. And to stay ahead of the game, we need to do that with our customers. If a customer puts a request, we need to follow up with them right away. We need to schedule an appointment with them right away, because it's almost an expectation now. So I'd say going into 2021, that would be mine.
Marco, how about you?
I will. I'm going to come out and say I don't think the instant piece in terms of sort of on-demand bookings is sort of the next frontier or the big next frontier. I think that's misses what the core of the experience needs to be, which is to be able to get whichever pro you want, sort of, and be connected with them and to book them, to be able to go directly. So I think this next phase is really all about moving past sort of using the internet just for discovery and moving towards bookings. But again, not on-demand general bookings. This stuff is not a commodity. Customers we talk to care a ton about who's doing it and the quality and the craftsmanship. And so how do we provide that booking and buying experience like consumers have in all sort of e-commerce categories in local services? And the platforms like us have a lot of work to enable that. But I think pros have a lot of work to meet that new world as well.
That's a great answer. Really appreciate you guys answering all those questions. I think is really rich content. What we can do now in the last kind of 15 minutes, this is move to Q&A. And I'm going to put this out there. I don't see a single question yet. Do you guys by chance see a question on your end? I want to make sure it's not a technology thing on my side. Okay. Well, I emailed Will in the middle of that, so we'll make sure that maybe it's not a tech thing and they can step in here, which will give us just another second for a question. I actually want to expand on what you were just saying there, Marco. So are you saying that you think it's less about the concept of being able to just book instantly and more about the choice that the consumer has around that experience? Is that the emphasis?
Yeah, so I think we all have this idea of what we want, which is just sort of like you click a button and you're done. And the question is, are you clicking that button and saying to the platform, I don't care which pro, send me whichever one, I just want this done? Or are you buying a specific pro? And I am here to say that I think both are critical, but the more important one that I think unlocks sort of more magic, more delight, more potential for both sides is when customers can book pros directly. And this sort of intermediated marketplace is going to be vital for sort of commodity jobs, small dollar jobs, maintenance tasks. It has a real role to play. But when you think about the hundreds of billions of dollars that people are spending on their most prized possession, they're often going to want to know who it is. And it's true when you buy clothes and you want to know what you're buying. It's true when you buy electronics, you care what it is. It's true when you're buying everything else. This category is not going to be different. I think there's been sort of an acceleration of this trend because it provides an end around to the experience of this instant booking, but it misses, I think, something that is core to shopping, which is being able to, and so I think the goal has to be able to do both choice and convenience, not just one.
Right. Well, and that's, yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah. Yeah. You're going to want.
And we also have to separate like what's, just talk versus real. So HomeAdvisor in their earnings reported yesterday, they did about 160 million in these fixed price services. That's sub 1%, probably sub 0.5% of the volume that's going through them right now. So we're really, really early days. It's only beginning now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel a little bit better. We got one question there so far. So if you guys have questions on anything that we're talking about, start to throw them in there. And one of the questions came from Wade. Marco, you were talking about marketplace. I'm sorry, you're talking about pros. Just to clarify to the group, what's the difference between the pro and the contractor? Are there any distinctions around that person interacting with the customer?
Ultimately, we aspire to technician level integration because you want to know as a homeowner, when is that technician on their way? What's their name going to be when they show up at my door? What is their specific credentialed? And so I think that is the end state, is going all the way to the technician, to truly the skilled professional in the home doing the work. I think we're a ways away from connecting all those dots and being able to provide that experience, but that's where it should be. And I take a pretty simplistic view. It's like, if that's what all customers would prefer, then we got to find a way to get there, even if it's going to be hard or challenging, because if we don't, somebody else will.
Right. Is there anything about this that's like new behavior we've not seen before? Or is it just the same behavior using a different medium?
So I think it's interesting because we are sort of exceptional as a category to not have had really a offline counterpart. There were the yellow pages and classifieds in the back of newspapers, but there was never the concept of like a retail. There was never a Macy's like there was for Amazon, prior to them. And I think that often narrows people's sort of imagination for what is possible, simply because we don't have this sort of offline sort of corollary to point to of, look, we're just building a bigger version of retailers that have been around for 100 years. But ultimately, I would suspect that just like demand for e-commerce increasingly is mediated by digital platforms, that demand for all commerce is going to be mediated by digital platforms. That feels like the inevitable direction that the world is going.
Right. So John or Marco, either one of you guys can step in this one. It's directed to you guys or to your category. So marketplace partners represent less than 35% of total lead flow. I'm going to believe that. I can't validate that, but I believe it. Sounds like a good stat. Where does this go over the next 3 to 5 years? This is from Ben over at ProNexis.
Look, I would hope that all the great pros we have on our platform, have a steady flow of repeat buyers and word of mouth. I think that is appropriate and healthy and never going to go away. But as a fraction of new business, I would expect we platforms to continue to grow. And ultimately, as a fraction of all the business that we enable to go up. And that's just because that's the way the tide is flowing, that when people go to search online, which they're going to do at an increasing fraction, they're primarily going to find the big platforms and go through them, who are going to be the ones who are going to deliver the best experience. And the same effects we've seen in e-commerce and travel is going to happen here too. And that feels like it's only going to grow.
Right. John, thoughts on that?
Can you repeat the question? I just got lost in Marco's answer there.
That's okay. It was so good.
Good.
So marketplace partners represent less than 35% of total lead flow. Where do you guys see that going from the HomeAdvisor side in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's not an answer that is equal to each contractor. It's not a cookie cutter answer. I think you should use these services to what works best for your business. I have companies that I work with that are completely booked with jobs and only use HomeAdvisor to supplement the times where they're not, when their books aren't filled. So I think it is not a cookie cutter answer. So for some people, do we want to deliver them more leads and buy more for us? Yes, if that's what they need. But if it's more so that a company that's been established, has word of mouth leads, and only needs leads here or there, we're here to give you the leads you need to be successful, and we want you to be successful, and that means in any case. So whether it's growth or scaling back, whatever fits your business and your market, we're here for you.
And it'll be interesting to watch, because it seems like there may be categories that are more tech savvy or appeal to a certain demographic, and so maybe it's that you see a shift of particular categories where that's becomes primarily digital versus the whole thing kind of being raised all at once. You're probably going to see different categories take off, I would imagine.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to this, Luke, is to date, I think what you've seen platforms like Thumbtack offer to these end consumers is primarily a great buying experience, a great sort of discovery and booking experience. What we are building, though, and what we will sort of offer in the future, and if you guys stay after this session, I'm going to give you a little background on, is really becoming much more of a partner to these homeowners in terms of the tools and services we offer them to be the place. They don't go just to, hire pros, but really to know which pros to hire and why and when. And I think what will look very different in the years to come is that home ownership, which is this like giant bundle of, adulting that most people, struggle through, is going to have a lot of innovation around. And I think there's a real opportunity for technology to enable that to be a lot better. And through that, generate a ton of commerce for our pros. But the relationship that we have to the customer is not simply a better tool, a better booking engine. It's a partnership. It's a membership of something that really brings them a lot of value beyond simply hiring. So, it's not just us. You see others working on that as well in other industries too, right? Like homeowner insurance is thinking about this. Home warranty players are thinking about this. Even the iBuyers are talking about this. So that feels like another big trend. I think that one's probably a little bit further out before it begins to dominate, but that feels like it's coming.
That's interesting. Let me throw one question out here. This is from Jonathan over at Hello Garage, and it's in reference to the no contact sales appointments. And so his question is, it seems to be that that's a growing trend, but for them specifically, that hasn't necessarily taken off. Is that unique? Maybe it's unique to their category, I don't know. But when it comes to booking these appointments, are you seeing certain categories, certain verticals take off more quickly than others? Or how is that shaping up?
For us specifically with the instant booking, it comes down to the individual company, individual market, individual the way they handle their marketing, the industry that they're in. So it comes down to a number of features. So with us, we encourage you to try all our different types of lead sources, including the booking. But like in whoever asked that question, I'm sorry. And you're sorry, Luke.
It was Jonathan with Hello Garage. So, one thing that they're curious about is from a franchisor side of things, is there something that they need to be doing to make the instant book or that concept more effective for them to benefit from that more? Marco?
Yeah, so what I'll say is we're seeing this take off across the board. In categories where we've started earliest, you see adoptions that are extremely high double digits for that category now. So this feels inevitable. And typically when pros haven't been able to make it work for them, there's like a workflow gap. They don't have the tooling on their end to integrate easily with where our tooling ends, and either they're not willing or not interested in sort of making the adjustment or providing the human bridge that can exist between those two. So that is it's a very real trade-off. I would encourage folks to be pretty creative here, and also to be pretty demanding of platforms like us. This is where the world is going, and we have to make it easy for all pros to take advantage of this. And this doesn't, I don't believe this is about giving the customer more choice. Nobody wants to email a pro to say, hey, are you free on Thursday, only to have them say no. That's it's a terrible customer experience. Who wants that?
Yeah, bypass that step. You should.
Yeah, so we're for sure going to bypass this. And I think for the pros who invest in it, what they see is they see a calendar that gets filled up with the exact leads that they want. And once they sort of tune the system to set that up, we're seeing incredible returns and retention on that. So I am convinced that that's the future. It's a lot of work to make that happen and happen reliably, but nobody wants to send that email about saying, when are you free, or can you do this?
Right. Brandon, we'll end with you. We just got a couple seconds left here. On the franchisor side, on just coming off what Marco is saying, instant booking, that customer experience, how are you guys positioning yourselves?
Yeah, on the franchisor side, we are doing a lot of instant or online booking. I mean, it's definitely a big part of what we're doing. So we're seeing that on the rise for sure. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I'm also reading Jonathan's question here. On our side, we definitely did see an overall increase in appointments. As a system, about a 50% increase in 2020 over 2019. So pretty substantial. Some of that is, in our case, new franchisees, but even existing franchisees at 20, 30, 40%. And a big step for us, which we really implemented, was online booking.
Right.
The ability for that customer to book right in the moment. And so we didn't lose, a certain percent adding steps. We're removing steps and tightening the process to get those appointments booked, as quickly as possible.
Right. Appreciate that, Brandon. We are at max time, and what we're going to do now is step into our session. Scott, do you want to step in and share anything?
Yeah, hey, I just want to say thank you to you, Luke, for moderating. You did a fantastic job, and I think we can all, if we were to rate people's backgrounds, Luke's wife has done the best job of designing their home. So way to go, Luke. Marco, thank you so much. Very insightful. I know we're going to come back to you just in a second. John, thanks for joining us, and Brandon, thank you for taking the time. We're going to go ahead and just take a few minutes here, about 10, to let Marco go ahead and talk about some of the future stuff that they're working on at Thumbtack. At the end of that, feel free to jump into the lounge to ask any of these speakers at their table any one-on-one questions you may have, or the arena to ask questions of any of the sponsors. And then I'll be signing off and seeing you all tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central with a welcome. And our kickoff 5 minutes after that will be an exiting panel with a couple PE funds and 3 founders who did it, built a home service business and sold, and we'll be hearing from them tomorrow. So thank you everyone for joining us. And with that, I'll let Marco go ahead and share for the next 10 minutes. Thanks, guys.